Ambassador Daniel Wright looked out the large window of his office aboard the Terran Embassy station. The massive gas planet Jupiter filled most of the view, its swirling storms and bands of clouds moving slowly beneath him. His office was simple but comfortable, with just a desk, a few chairs, and walls lined with digital screens showing information from across the galaxy. Daniel sighed as he scrolled through the latest reports on his tablet. The war between the Silvari Dominion and the Krell Imperium had just entered its 29th year. Both sides were powerful alien civilizations with technology far beyond what humanity publicly displayed. Their conflict had already destroyed dozens of star systems and killed billions of beings across the galaxy. "More bad news?" asked Olivia Carter as she entered the office carrying 2 cups of coffee. Daniel gratefully accepted 1 cup. "The Krell just wiped out another neutral colony. 3rd one this month." The Silvari responded by destroying 2 Krell mining outposts. Olivia sat down across from him. She was his assistant and one of the few people he trusted completely. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and concern showed in her eyes. "And still the Galactic Conclave does nothing," she said. "What can they do?" "The Silvari and Krell are the 2 most powerful forces in the galaxy. Nobody can stop them," Daniel replied, though he knew this wasn't entirely true. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 75 years ago, when Earth made first contact with alien life. They discovered a galaxy already filled with hundreds of spacefaring species and complex political alliances. Most galactic powers viewed humans as amusing curiosities, primitive but harmless beings from a backwater planet who had somehow stumbled into the stars. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had been quietly studying their technologies, tactics, and weaknesses. In secret facilities hidden throughout Earth's solar system and beyond, human scientists and engineers had been developing their own unique military innovations. The United Earth government had maintained a careful policy of neutrality in all galactic conflicts, watching and learning while being dismissed as unimportant. Daniel's communication panel chimed with an urgent alert. He tapped it, and the stern face of Admiral George Franklin appeared on screen. "Ambassador Wright, you're being summoned to an emergency session of the Galactic Conclave," the Admiral said without greeting. "The meeting begins in 6 hours." Daniel raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Emergency session? Humans are rarely invited." "To those. We usually only have observer status. This time is different. You're being given speaking privileges," Admiral Franklin said. His expression gave nothing away, but Daniel could tell something significant was happening. "What's this about, Admiral?" "You'll receive a secure briefing package shortly. Read it privately. This is classified at the highest level." The Admiral paused. "Things are about to change, Daniel. Earth command out." The screen went dark, leaving Daniel and Olivia staring at each other in confusion. "Speaking privileges at the Conclave," Olivia said. "That never happens. The major powers barely acknowledge we exist." Daniel's tablet chimed with a new notification. The secure briefing had arrived, marked with the highest level of encryption. "Help me prepare for the meeting. I need to review whatever this is." While Olivia gathered information about the current Conclave representatives and recent galactic events, Daniel entered his private security room. The door sealed behind him, activating systems that blocked all signals and surveillance. He pressed his palm to the tablet's security scanner and waited as it verified his identity. The briefing began with a simple message. "Ambassador Wright, the United Earth government has made the decision to abandon our policy of neutrality." Daniel read further, his eyes widening with each paragraph. Secret Earth intelligence had discovered that both the Silvari and the Krell had long-term plans to eventually target Earth's resources once their current conflict concluded. Neither alien power saw humans as a threat, just a resource-rich planet, to be harvested or controlled after dealing with more important enemies. What shocked Daniel most was the revelation of Earth's true military capability. For decades, humanity had been building fleets in hidden shipyards throughout the solar system and beyond. New weapons technologies, defensive systems, and tactical innovations had been developed in complete secrecy. Factories buried inside asteroids, and moons had produced thousands of warships, all kept carefully hidden from alien observation. The final page of the briefing contained his orders. Daniel would announce humanity's entry into the Galactic War at the emergency conclave session. Not as allies to either side, but as a third force declaring war on both the Silvari Dominion and the Krell Imperium simultaneously. It seemed like madness. Earth challenging the two most powerful civilizations in the galaxy at once? It would appear to be suicide to everyone at the conclave, which was exactly the point. Daniel left the security room, his face pale but determined. Olivia looked up from her work, immediately noticing his changed demeanor. "Daniel, what's wrong?" He couldn't tell her everything yet, but he needed her help. "We're heading to the conclave station. I need you to prepare the strongest possible statement condemning both the Silvari and Krell for their attacks on neutral worlds." Olivia's eyes widened. "You're not seriously going to antagonize both of them?" "Those are my orders," he said simply. "Pack your things. Our shuttle leaves in an hour." As they traveled toward the massive conclave station, Daniel watched the stars through the shuttle viewport. Somewhere out there, Earth's hidden fleets were moving into position, preparing for simultaneous strikes across dozens of star systems. The plan had been in development for years, with humanity preparing for this moment while appearing weak and inconsequential. His communication panel chimed again. This time it was President Samuel Bennett himself, his face solemn on the small, private screen. "Ambassador Wright, you understand what you're about to do?" "Yes, Mr. President, though I admit, challenging both galactic powers simultaneously seems—" Daniel hesitated. "Insane?" The president almost smiled. "That's what they'll think too. Our advantage is psychological as much as technological. While they've been fighting each other, they've completely underestimated us. By the time they realize their mistake, our fleets will have already struck." Daniel nodded. "And the other species? The neutral worlds? Many have already secretly agreed to join us once we make our move. They've suffered under Silvari and Krell aggression for too long." As the shuttle approached the conclave station, Daniel received his final orders. "Operation Thunderbolt is now active. Deliver your announcement precisely as instructed. The future of humanity depends on these next few hours." Daniel straightened his diplomatic uniform as the shuttle docked. He took a deep breath, preparing himself to deliver the message that would shock the galaxy. "Ready?" Olivia asked, standing beside him at the airlock. "No," Daniel admitted, "but Earth is counting on us." The doors slid open, revealing the ornate corridors of the Galactic Conclave Station. Representatives from hundreds of species walked past, most barely glancing at the human delegates. Their dismissive attitude would change very soon. In just 1 hour, humanity would reveal its true strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Conclave Chamber was enormous. It formed a perfect circle with rising tiers of seats that could hold representatives from over 200 species. At the center stood a single speaker's podium, currently empty as delegates filed in and found their places. Daniel Wright and Olivia Carter entered through the human delegation's modest entrance. Unlike the grand doorways used by major powers, the human entrance was small and located near the back. This was by design, a constant reminder that humans were considered unimportant in galactic politics. "They've given us a speaking slot, right before the main agenda," Olivia whispered as they took their seats. "That's unusual." Daniel nodded. Typically, humans were lucky to speak at all, and when they did, it was at the very end when most delegates had already left. A slot near the beginning meant someone wanted everyone to hear what Earth had to say. Across the chamber, the Silvari delegation entered through massive golden doors. Their tall, elegant forms moved with grace, their silvery skin reflecting the chamber's lights. High Admiral Zexataral led them, his elaborate uniform decorated with symbols of countless victories. The Silvari considered themselves the galaxy's most advanced civilization, with technology and culture they claimed was perfect. From the opposite side came the Krell delegation. Where the Silvari were tall and slender, the Krell were broad and powerful, their thick gray skin looking like living stone. War Master Grook stomped at the front, his face bearing scars from 100 battles. The Krell believed strength was everything, and they measured worth by military power. Both alien leaders glanced briefly at the human section. Daniel caught their looks, a mixture of dismissal and mild amusement. To them, humans were barely worth noticing, if only they knew what was coming. The conclave elder, a member of the ancient Thelian species, called the emergency session to order. His thin voice echoed through the chamber's perfect acoustics. We gather to address the recent escalation between the Silvari Dominion and Krell Imperium. The destruction of neutral colonies cannot continue. For nearly an hour, representatives from various affected worlds described attacks on their planets. Some showed images of devastated colonies and refugee crises. Throughout it all, the Silvari and Krell delegates appeared bored, occasionally, whispering among themselves. Finally, the elder spoke again. Before we address the main proposals, we have a statement from the Earth delegation. A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. Most delegates hadn't expected the humans to speak. Some smaller species looked curious, but the major powers barely paid attention. Daniel stood and walked to the central podium. The path seemed longer than usual, each step bringing him closer to changing humanity's place in the galaxy forever. At the podium, he took a deep breath and looked around at the assembled delegates. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Conclave, he began, his voice steady. For 3 decades, we have watched your civilizations tear each other apart. The standard translation system carried his words to every delegate in their native language. A few looked up, noticing his unusual opening. We've documented your atrocities, your planetary bombardments, your genocide of neutral worlds caught in your crossfire. Now more delegates were paying attention. This wasn't the usual careful, timid speech expected from humans. Even some Silvari representatives had stopped their private conversations to listen. The United Earth government has reached a decision that will alter the course of this conflict, Daniel continued, his voice growing stronger. High Admiral Zex Teral of the Silvari finally looked directly at Daniel, his expression showing mild curiosity. Across the chamber, War Master Grook of the Krell let out a low grunt that might have been amusement. Daniel paused, knowing his next words would be remembered in history forever. As of 800, Universal Standard Time, humanity is entering the war. The chamber erupted in confused sounds. Some delegates laughed, assuming this was some strange human joke. Others looked confused or concerned. The Silvari and Krell representatives exchanged amused glances. A Krell officer near War Master Grook loudly asked, "With what? Primitive rockets and chemical explosives?" This brought more laughter from several delegations. Daniel waited for it to die down before continuing. We are not joining either side. We are declaring war on both the Silvari Dominion and the Krell Imperium for crimes against sentient life and the imminent threat you pose to Earth and our allies. Now the laughter turned to shock. Delegates looked at each other in disbelief. A human declaring war on the 2 most powerful forces in the galaxy simultaneously. It seemed like madness. High Admiral Zex Teral stood. Is this some form of human humor we do not understand? Or has your species developed a death wish? Before Daniel could respond, his communication device vibrated. It was the signal. I believe actions speak louder than words, Daniel said calmly. He tapped a control on the podium. Please direct your attention to the main display screens. The chamber's massive view screens activated, showing live feeds from across the galaxy. On screen after screen, human warships appeared, hundreds of them emerging from hiding places in gas giants, asteroid belts, and artificial nebulas throughout multiple systems. These weren't small vessels, but massive warships with designs no one had seen before. The chamber fell completely silent. On one screen, Fleet Admiral Susan Miller appeared, standing on the bridge of the human flagship UES Defiance. Her uniform was crisp, her expression determined. All ships, commence Operation Thunderbolt, she commanded. The screens showed human vessels moving with perfect coordination, heading toward key Silvari and Krell military installations. The ships traveled using drive systems neither alien power had seen before, moving faster than should have been possible. Chaos erupted in the conclave chamber. Delegates were shouting, demanding explanations or giving urgent orders through their communication devices. The Silvari and Krell leaders were surrounded by their officers, all talking at once. "For too long you've dismissed us as primitive," Daniel continued, raising his voice over the noise. "You've underestimated human ingenuity, human determination, and human unity. While you fought each other, we prepared." Another screen showed the first human strikes, special weapons disabling a Krell defense station without destroying it. The station's lights flickered and died, its weapon systems going offline. No lives were lost, but the mighty Krell facility was rendered useless in seconds. Daniel stepped away from the podium as two human security officers appeared beside him. They weren't there before. They had somehow entered the chamber undetected. "Ambassador Wright, we need to leave now," one said quietly. War Master Grook had risen to his full height, pointing toward Daniel. "Seize the human!" he roared, but Daniel and his security detail were already moving toward a side exit. Several Krell soldiers tried to intercept them, but they suddenly stumbled, affected by some invisible force emanating from devices the human officers carried. As Daniel reached the exit, he turned back to the chamber one last time. The galaxy was changing before his eyes. "We didn't want this war," he called out. "But we will finish it." The door sealed behind them as they raced toward the waiting shuttle. Across the galaxy, humanity had just revealed its true power, and nothing would ever be the same again. The human shuttle raced away from the Conclave station, its engines pushing to maximum speed. Inside, Daniel Wright held onto his seat as the craft performed evasive maneuvers. Beside him, Commander Nathan Scott led the extraction team that had appeared so suddenly in the Conclave chamber. "How did you get in there without being detected?" Daniel asked. Nathan smiled slightly. "Stealth technology. We've been developing it for years. The Silvari and Krell scan for energy signatures they understand. Our systems operate on different principles." Through the shuttle's viewport, Daniel could see several Silvari pursuit ships attempting to follow them. Their sleek silver forms cut through space with incredible speed, but they couldn't seem to lock onto the human shuttle. "They're trying to target us," explained the pilot, a young woman named Kelly. "But our countermeasures are scrambling their systems." Nathan nodded. "The same technology is being deployed across all our ships. It's one of our many advantages." A large screen at the front of the shuttle's cabin activated, showing a secure transmission from Earth. Defense Secretary Alan Jackson appeared, his expression serious but satisfied. "Good work, Ambassador Wright," he said. "You're now witnessing what we've been planning for decades." The screen split to show multiple feeds from across the galaxy. Human forces were engaged in perfectly coordinated strikes against key Silvari and Krell military installations. What seemed like suicidal madness just hours ago now looked very different. "Are those our allies?" Daniel asked, pointing to ships with unfamiliar designs fighting alongside human vessels. "Yes," Jackson confirmed. "We're not alone in this fight. Several mid-tier galactic powers that suffered under Silvari and Krell aggression have joined us. The Arcadian Republic, the Nomad, Clusters, and the Vega Confederacy all signed secret alliance treaties with Earth months ago." Daniel watched in amazement as the combined fleets worked with perfect coordination. Human ships used technologies neither the Silvari nor Krell seemed prepared for, weapons that bypassed shields, communication systems immune to jamming, and defensive measures that made them difficult to target. "We've been studying their weaknesses for years," Nathan explained. "The Silvari rely too heavily on their advanced shielding technology. Our phase shift torpedoes simply bypass those shields completely." On one screen, Daniel watched as small human vessels easily avoided the powerful but slow-firing Krell weapons. "And the Krell?" he asked. "They depend on brute force and overwhelming firepower," Nathan said. "But their targeting systems are predictable. Our AI tactical systems can calculate their firing patterns and stay one step ahead." The shuttle docked with a much larger human vessel hidden in an asteroid field. As they stepped aboard, Daniel was greeted by more screens showing the ongoing conflict. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Human forces were actually winning. "This is the UES Liberty," Nathan said. "One of our command ships. You'll be safer here until we can get you back to Earth." On the ship's bridge, officers moved with calm efficiency, directing operations across multiple star systems. No one seemed surprised or overwhelmed by the fact that humanity had just declared war on the galaxy's two superpowers. "How long have we been preparing for this?" Daniel asked. "Since first contact," replied Captain Linda Hayes, the Liberty's commander. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and the confident air of someone who had trained for this moment her entire career. "When we learned about the galaxy, we also learned how vulnerable Earth could be. The UEG made the decision to prepare, in secret." Linda led Daniel to the tactical center, where a three-dimensional map showed the position of all forces across dozens of star systems. Human and allied ships were marked in blue, Silvari in silver, and Krell in red. All across the map, blue markers were advancing. "We're focusing on disabling rather than destroying when possible," Linda explained. "This isn't about revenge. It's about neutralizing the threat they pose." A communication officer called out, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from a Silvari command ship. They're demanding to speak with our leaders." Linda nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The face of a Silvari commander appeared, his silver skin flushed with a blue tint that Daniel recognized as a sign of anger or stress. "This is Commander Vexilorith of the Silvari High Fleet," the alien said. "I demand to know how primitives, like you, acquired such advanced technology." Linda stepped forward. "This is Captain Linda Hayes of the Earth Defense Fleet. We didn't acquire our technology, Commander. We developed it ourselves while you were busy underestimating us." The Silvari looked shocked. "Impossible. Your species has only been spacefaring for less than a century." "That's right," Linda replied. "And in that time we studied how you fight, how you think, and where your weaknesses lie. You've been so busy fighting the Krell that you never considered us a threat. You cannot hope to defeat both our civilizations," the Silvari insisted. "This is suicide." Linda's expression remained calm. "Look at your tactical displays, Commander. In just 6 hours we've neutralized nearly 30% of both Silvari and Krell military assets, with minimal casualties on all sides." The Silvari commander's face showed a mixture of disbelief and growing realization. Without another word, he cut the transmission. "He's going to check if what you said is true," Daniel remarked. Linda nodded. "And he'll find out it is." A new alert sounded, and more officers hurried to their stations. "Krell reinforcements detected in the Proxima system," one reported. "They're bringing in their heavy dreadnoughts." "Deploy Strike Group 7 with the new shield disruption technology," Linda ordered. "And notify our Arcadian allies to move their fleet into supporting position." As orders were carried out with smooth efficiency, Daniel felt a growing sense of pride mixed with concern. "I never imagined we were capable of this," he said quietly. "Most humans didn't know," Nathan told him. "The program was kept secret to prevent leaks. Only those directly involved were aware of the full scale." Linda turned to Daniel. "Ambassador, we'll need your diplomatic skills more than ever in the coming days. Once the initial shock wears off, both the Silvari and Krell will be looking for ways to divide our alliance." Daniel nodded. "I understand, but they underestimated us militarily. They'll underestimate us diplomatically as well." "That's counting on it," Linda said with a small smile. The tactical display updated, showing more blue markers advancing across the galaxy. Human forces continued to reveal new capabilities with each engagement. Adaptive shields, faster than light. Communications, weapons that could disable without destroying. The galactic power balance was shifting hour by hour. "What happens when we win?" Daniel asked. "What's the end goal here?" Linda and Nathan exchanged looks. "That's where you come in, Ambassador," Nathan said. "Our military can force them to the table, but it will take diplomacy to build a lasting peace." Daniel looked back at the tactical display, watching as human ingenuity and preparation changed the course of galactic history. After decades of being dismissed as primitives, humanity was finally showing its true strength. "Then we'd better start planning for peace," he said. "Even as we fight this war." 3 weeks had passed since humanity shocked the galaxy by entering the war. Daniel Wright stood in a large briefing room aboard the mobile headquarters ship UES Constitution. Around him were representatives from various allied species who had joined Earth in what people now called the Liberation War. "The Silvari and Krell are adapting to our tactics," said General Patricia Rodriguez, pointing to a holographic display showing recent battle data. "But they're always one step behind." The initial shock of human military prowess had worn off, and both the Silvari and Krell were desperately trying to counter human technology. Their attempts were largely unsuccessful. Each human victory revealed new capabilities neither alien power had anticipated. "How is this possible?" asked a representative from the Arcadian Republic, a humanoid alien with blue-tinted skin. "Your species has been spacefaring for such a short time." Daniel looked to Dr. Edward Phillips, who nodded and stepped forward. Edward was the director of the Classified Human Advantage Program, the secret initiative that had developed Earth's advanced military technology. He was a slender man with kind eyes that contrasted with his brilliant scientific mind. "The answer is simpler than you might think," Edward said. "Humans evolved on what most galactic species would consider a death world." The room fell silent, as the Allied representatives listened carefully. "Earth has high gravity compared to most inhabited planets," Edward explained. "It has extreme biodiversity with millions of species, many dangerous to humans. Our planet experiences wild climate shifts, natural disasters, and forced us to adapt constantly to survive." He brought up images of Earth's varied environments, from Arctic tundra to scorching deserts, dense jungles to stormy seas. "These conditions produced beings with unique cognitive patterns," Edward continued. "Where other species developed technology along predictable lines, humans excelled at lateral thinking, finding solutions no one else considered because they seemed illogical or inefficient at first glance." He showed examples of human innovations, comparing them to standard galactic approaches. "Most species, including the Silvari and Krell, have fought using increasingly refined versions of the same technologies for centuries. They make incremental improvements to what already works. Humans, facing resource limitations and constant threats, developed entirely different approaches." On the display, diagrams showed the principles behind human military technology: quantum entanglement communications that couldn't be jammed, gravity manipulation weapons that ignored traditional shields, biomechanical interfaces that allowed human pilots to react at speeds matching the fastest alien reflexes. "We didn't develop better versions of existing technology," Edward said. "We created alternatives based on different scientific principles." An officer interrupted with an urgent message. "General Rodriguez, we've detected a Krell battle group approaching the Rigel system. They appear to be escorting something large, possibly their planet killer weapon." The room tensed. The Krell planet killer was a massive weapon capable of destroying entire worlds. Intelligence suggested they had only used it twice in their long war with the Silvari, saving it for desperate situations. "They must be getting desperate," General Rodriguez said. "Prepare a strike team to capture or neutralize the weapon." "Capture?" asked one of the alien representatives, sounding shocked. "Such a weapon should be destroyed." "Knowledge is never destroyed in human philosophy," Edward replied. "We want to understand how it works so we can develop countermeasures and ensure such weapons are never used again." Commander Olivia Carter, who had been working closely with Daniel since the war began, stepped forward. "I volunteer to lead the strike team, General." Daniel looked at his assistant with surprise. He knew she had military training but hadn't realized she was qualified for such a dangerous mission. "Olivia, are you sure?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Before I was your assistant, I was Special Operations. This is what I trained for." General Rodriguez considered for a moment, then nodded. "Assemble your team, Commander Carter. You leave in 2 hours." As the meeting continued, Daniel found himself increasingly concerned about Olivia. She had become not just a colleague, but a friend. The thought of her facing the Krell's most powerful weapon was troubling. After the briefing, he found her preparing with her team in the ship's armory. "I didn't know you were hiding such skills," Daniel said. Olivia smiled as she checked her specialized armor. "My role as your assistant was partly a cover. I was assigned to protect you and gather intelligence. But I genuinely came to respect you, Daniel. Be careful out there," he said. "We still have a lot of diplomatic work ahead." I'll be back before you know it, she replied with confidence. 6 hours later, Daniel joined the command staff as they monitored Olivia's mission from the tactical center. Her team had approached the Krell battle group using the advanced stealth technology that had proven so effective throughout the war. "Strike team is in position," reported a communications officer. "They're preparing to board the support vessel carrying the planet killer." On screen, tiny dots representing Olivia's team moved toward the massive Krell ships. Daniel held his breath as they disappeared from sensors, having reached the target vessel. For 30 tense minutes there was no communication. Then suddenly, the tactical display showed the Krell ships firing at each other in confusion. "Strike. Team has deployed the false signal transmitters," someone reported. "Krell targeting systems are compromised." Another voice cut in. "Commander Carter reports they've reached the central chamber. They're preparing to disable the weapon's core." Cheers erupted around the command center, quickly silenced as General Rodriguez raised her hand. "Wait," she said. "Something's wrong." A distress signal came through, broken and filled with static. "Unexpected defense system need immediate casualties." Olivia's voice cut in and out. "Get them out of there," General Rodriguez ordered. For several chaotic minutes, reports came in fragments. The strike team had reached the planet killer's control systems but encountered an automated defense mechanism no one had anticipated. They'd succeeded in disabling the weapon, but at a cost. When the full report finally came, Daniel felt his heart sink. The mission was a success. The planet killer had been neutralized and its control systems captured for study. But Olivia had been critically wounded, protecting her team from the unexpected defenses. "She's being transported to the medical bay now," said the medical officer. "Her condition is critical but stable." As Daniel waited outside the medical bay, an officer approached with news that seemed distant and unimportant compared to Olivia's condition. "Ambassador Wright, we've just received word. The Krell Imperium has requested armistice talks." Daniel barely processed the information. "What?" "The loss of their planet killer has broken their resolve," the officer explained. "They're requesting a ceasefire and diplomatic negotiations." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding the significance despite his worry for Olivia. The Krell, one of the galaxy's 2 superpowers, were giving up after just 3 weeks of fighting. "Tell them we'll arrange talks," he said. "But first, I need to know if Commander Carter will recover." "The doctors are doing everything possible," the officer assured him. Daniel looked through the medical bay window where doctors worked frantically to save Olivia. The war might be turning in humanity's favor, but victory would mean little if they lost good people along the way. "We didn't start this fight," he said quietly. "But we need to make sure the peace that follows is worth the sacrifice." 6 months had passed since humanity stunned the galaxy by entering the war. Now representatives from all major galactic powers gathered in the lunar city of New Armstrong for peace negotiations. The massive dome of the Armstrong Peace Center provided a breathtaking view of Earth rising over the lunar landscape, a fitting backdrop for this historic moment. Daniel Wright adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform as he prepared to present the United Earth government's terms. The past months had transformed him. No longer the cautious ambassador from a supposedly minor species, he now served as Earth's chief diplomatic officer, respected and sometimes feared by the same aliens who once dismissed humanity. The Krell Imperium had surrendered 3 weeks after the capture of their planet killer weapon. The Silvari Dominion fought for 3 more months before a decisive battle where human-led forces disabled their central command structure with minimal casualties on either side. What alien strategists had predicted would be a suicidal gesture, by humanity had instead become a swift and decisive victory. "Ready for this?" asked a familiar voice. Daniel turned to see Olivia Carter approaching. She walked with a slight limp, a reminder of her injuries during the mission to capture the Krell weapon. Her recovery had been long but successful, and she now served as Daniel's chief security advisor. "As ready as I'll ever be," Daniel replied. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day," she said with a smile. "The doctors say the limp might be permanent, but it's a small price to pay." Together they entered the grand conference chamber where representatives from over 50 species waited. At the center were two tables for the defeated powers, the Sylvari delegation led by their new prime diplomat Nexvarl, and the Krell representatives commanded by War Elder Grook. Both leaders had replaced those who led their civilizations into War President Samuel Bennett of the United Earth government sat at the head table, flanked by leaders from Earth's key allies. He nodded to Daniel, signaling him to begin. Daniel walked to the central podium, aware of every eye in the room watching him. 6 months ago, most had laughed at humanity's declaration of war. None were laughing now. Representatives of the galaxy, Daniel began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We gather today not to celebrate victory or impose punishment, but to build a new future together. He looked directly at the Sylvari and Krell delegations. The United Earth government has no desire for conquest or subjugation. What we propose is a fundamental restructuring of galactic relations. On large screens around the room, details of Earth's proposal appeared. The old galactic conclave would be replaced by a new interstellar council, where all species would have equal representation. Military forces throughout the galaxy would be reduced and monitored by a multi-species peacekeeping fleet. Technology sharing would be encouraged to raise the standard of living across all worlds. "This is unexpected," said the Sylvari prime diplomat, his silver face showing confusion. "You have the military advantage, yet you do not demand reparations or territory." "Humans have a saying," Daniel replied. "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Earth's own history taught us that harsh peace terms only lead to future conflicts." War Elder Grook of the Krell rumbled his agreement. "The Krell understand war, but we have never understood peace. Perhaps it is time we learned." As discussions continued throughout the day, Daniel noticed some human representatives looking uncomfortable with the generous terms. During a break, one approached him. "Sir, with respect, we could demand much more," the representative whispered. "We have them at our mercy. Why not secure Earth's dominance for generations?" Before Daniel could answer, President Bennett joined them. "Because that's not who we are," the president said firmly. "We didn't fight this war to become what we opposed." Later that evening, President Bennett addressed all delegates in a speech that would be broadcast across the galaxy. Daniel watched from the side as the president spoke with passion and conviction. "We didn't enter this war seeking power," Bennett said. "Humanity entered the galactic stage with a promise. Not to conquer, but to bring balance. We choose cooperation over domination, understanding over fear, peace over perpetual conflict." The speech was met with applause from most delegations, though some remained cautious. After 3 decades of war between the Sylvari and Krell, with countless atrocities committed by both sides, trust would take time to build. In the following days, the peace agreement took shape. Each civilization would maintain its core territories but withdraw from contested worlds. A neutral zone would be established along former battle lines, overseen by the new peacekeeping fleet with ships and personnel from all major powers, including reformed Sylvari and Krell forces. On the final day of negotiations, as delegates prepared to sign the historic accord, a young Sylvari diplomat approached Daniel during a brief recess. "Ambassador Wright," she said hesitantly, "may I ask you something?" Daniel nodded encouragingly. "How did you know you could win? Your species faced overwhelming odds against 2 vastly more powerful adversaries. It seemed impossible." Daniel smiled. "We didn't know for certain. But throughout human history, we've faced overwhelming odds against more powerful adversaries. We've learned that determination, innovation, and moral clarity can overcome seemingly insurmountable advantages." The Sylvari considered this. "My teachers always told us that humans were primitive, that your quick rise to the stars was merely luck. A common misunderstanding," Daniel replied. "Many species measure advancement by how long they've had certain technologies. Humans measure it by what we do with the knowledge we gain, and how quickly we can adapt when challenged." As the ceremony began and delegates took their places, Daniel caught Olivia's eye across the room. They had come so far from that first day when he'd received his shocking orders in the Jupiter embassy. What had seemed like a suicidal mission had transformed the galaxy. News arrived that the first joint human-alien scientific expedition had departed for the galactic core, while combined humanitarian fleets brought aid to worlds devastated by the long conflict. Among the medical personnel serving on these missions were doctors who had saved Olivia's life, now sharing their knowledge with other species. Daniel stood with the other signatories as the final documents were prepared. Outside the Peace Center, Earth glowed blue and green in the black sky, no longer an insignificant backwater but the birthplace of the civilization that had changed everything. For the first time in centuries, President Bennett said as he prepared to sign, "Our galaxy looks toward a future of cooperation, rather than conquest, a future shaped by all of us together." As Daniel added his signature to the historic document, he thought of all the lives lost in the long conflict, and all those who would now have a chance for peace. The galaxy had dismissed humans as primitive apes from an unremarkable world. In the end, that underestimation had changed the course of history. The human liberation war had lasted just 6 months. The peace they were building would, with luck and determination, last for generations to come.